So this is where I get to what I call eudaimonics in my latest book. So eudaimonia, we already had a very nice discussion of this by Anthony. Until about 1975, it's my understanding that in America this concept in Aristotle. Aristotle says in the Nicomachean Ethics, he says, I go around Athens asking everybody, what is the summum bonum? Well, he couldn't have asked the summum bonum because that's Latin and he was Greek, but you get the idea. What's the thing you all seek more than anything else? And everybody says eudaimonia. But then he said, when I asked them what they mean by that, they mean different things. Some mean reputation, some mean sex, drugs, rock and roll, some people mean contemplation, and then he says, this is where the expert comes in. Now, people, I think this is important for us, okay? This is where expertise comes in. It isn't like any old person is entitled to their opinion about any old thing. Sarah Palin is not entitled to opinion about global warming. So too, Aristotle thinks, you don't just ask the person on the street. Why? Because the person on the street is watching that TV show that says the unexamined life on it that Roger showed us. That's where they're getting their feedback. So anyway, eudaimonia was translated for a while as happiness, but in about the mid-70s, I think John Cooper at Princeton said, let's translate it as flourishing, fulfillment. One reason is actually Aristotle has this very interesting thing to say. He says, you can't tell whether a person was a eudaimon. My students tease me because I pronounce it like it's French, eudaimon. But anyway, you can't tell if a person is eudaimon until 2 generations have passed. So it's not subjective, okay? So he actually wouldn't, so what the kind of work that Sonia does and Diener do is on what's called subjective well-being. Aristotle would say, that's not the prize. That isn't the prize. It's something else, okay? And there's that book, Happiness is Overrated. I own it, I believe in it, but I haven't read it. Okay, so what I call eudaimonics is my name for disciplined naturalistic, I emphasize the naturalistic, inquiry into the causes, conditions, and constituents of eudaimonia. That's sort of, the reason I like it as a foreign word is it doesn't beg the question. What I use in my work now is whenever I talk about a conception of eudaimonia, I'll say eudaimonia and superscript it. So I'll say eudaimonia Confucian, eudaimonia Buddhist, eudaimonia this. And I'll say eudaimonia standard brand American, which is happy, happy, joy, joy, click your heels, and I don't think is very uplifting. Okay, so what are the contributors here? There are all these disciplines, I suggest. Now, I'm not going to tell you any of my real ideas, but I'll throw out one. So and then I'm going to turn to Guven. When people say, well, what is your conception of happiness? Well, first of all, it goes with things Anthony said. I don't think there's like a one-size-fits-all model. I just think there's wisdom out there. And one place I look for wisdom is I do a lot of work in cross-cultural or comparative ethics. So people, for example, are always telling me you can't be happy unless you believe in God. Well, tell the Chinese people that. There's a great tradition that just didn't invent the concept of a creator God or a place that you go afterwards. This is just there for the asking, and people will be more aware and know how to criticize certain types of arguments if they look at things cross-culturally. My own view is what I call lately Platonic hedonism, it goes like this. It's Platonic with a small p. Plato famously said, the best way to live is to get back in touch with truth, goodness, and beauty, and those were forms up in Plato's heaven. I don't believe in Plato's heaven, but I think there's something attractive about this. Now, is it right? Is it a way to live? Is it a way for everybody? Probably not for everybody. And here I just throw out a challenge, because I know there's both some good friends and some new friends I met, like Sonia, in the audience. I think that we should seek eudaimonia, or at least I like doing it this way, at the intersection of what is true, good, and beautiful. The reason this is actually controversial is because there's a lot of literature in psychology about positive illusions, which says actually that there's a price to be paid for truthfulness. You don't want to think that you'll get prostate cancer if you're a male, or breast cancer if you're a woman, or get in a car accident, or get divorced. I've actually challenged the way that some of this literature is read, but notice the idea there would be it's good for people to be under certain illusions or delusions because they're happier. In fact, I've been looking recently, and I'll close with this and turn it to Guven. One area that this comes up all the time is in terms of beliefs that I think that I personally have to fight against, supernaturalistic or non-naturalistic beliefs. I think these are dangerous, have proven themselves to be dangerous again and again. Recently, I looked up in the psychiatric literature. People always tell me, oh, you should talk to people in divinity schools more because you're too critical of religion. Well, I do talk to people in divinity schools, and I think that when I talk to them, I'm really unimpressed about what they know about truth. I think it's interesting, the maneuvers they make. Like last Thursday, I was told, it used to be that we thought that God created the universe at the beginning, but now we think he's sucking it in from the other side. I said, well, you can say anything you want, but a good university like mine should not pay you to say that kind of stuff. So here's the concern that I think this idea of comforting illusions may be, I'm hoping personally, this is personal, that it's like it's transitional period. As we get used to the truths behind these different forms of existentialism, I think we can progress. I'm hopeful. But I'm not consoled by the fact that all the psychiatric literature that I look up under delusion says a delusion is a belief that you won't give up under any circumstances unless it's a religious belief. And that concerns me. Guven. Thank you.